Hey everybody, Bridgette Dolgoff, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project. Anyway, we have another storm moving in, and I'm just getting up and I'm getting coffee and kind of looking at some really awesome videos on history of star forts. And yep. Okay, so I kind of want to talk about this is going to be thyroid thymus video 2, but I also want to talk about it kind of in the beginning. I'm not moving into an ascension process, but I was pretty awake when I showed up, and then I've kind of been beaten into submission over my life. Not a lot of times of nutrient density, and even had, messed around with drugs in my late teens. And like most, drank pretty heavy in my late teens and early 20s. And, worked my ass off and, overworked my body physically and just a lot of other things. So, since I had since when I had the brain cancer till now, I have spent all that time, like 18 years, in nutrient density. And even going back and getting my farming certifications and being on farms and doing biodynamic work and studying nutritional work by Rudolf Steiner and other amazing people that all goes back to the soil, the water, the air, the sun, and the animals. Right? Animals are a key component to the soil. So nutrient, I can't, tell you enough at how important the nutrient aspect is going to be to get you under control emotionally. So thyroid, and I'll tell you why I call it the thyroid mostly, but in the thymus, I call them the bridge glands, because they're bridging lots of different things, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So first thing you have to start working on is the nutrient part, getting enough vitamin E, getting enough vitamin C, because, a lot of these glands have a lot of connective tissue. And if you don't have enough copper and you don't have enough vitamin C and you don't have enough nutrient synthesis from food, combining with food, you should only, add a supplement in when there's no food available to eat, and that's what we're facing, really. And a lot of people are having serious health problems because food is not a sovereign aspect of life. All people should have food, period, end of story, and good food and nutrient dense food. But in America, a lot of people are poor and broke. A lot of people are depressed. A lot of people can barely, wake up every morning. And that has a lot to do with nutrient deficiency, right? Okay. So amplified is if you eat anything really white without anything in it. Now, if you're going to eat basmati rice, you could cook lentils with it and do a half and half, and then you have a whole protein, and then you don't have the bad consequences of the white rice, right? You're actually creating a new, chemistry, which is, beans and rice, especially basmati and lentils are like the number one best protein on the earth, right? Thousands and thousands of years, people in India have been eating those components, right? That's what the Ayurvedic diet is based on. First the principles of the nutrient, how the food's cooked, the components of the different layers of the food, that bring you, like full nutrient compositions, right? Combinations of foods. Okay, if you smoke or drink white bread, white pastas, white refined and overly processed foods, because everything has been removed from them, they actually, when you eat them, they actually have to pull nutrient out of your tissues, pull nutrients out of places inside your body to process themselves, right? So on top of them not offering you any type of nutrient, they actually steal in order to be able to metabolize and process and digest them, through your body. They actually your body has to pull out nutrient in order to get these things processed, right? Because they're missing everything. And your body, your digestive tract is designed to break everything down in a way where it has the perfect nutritional components, the perfect chemistry mix, right? Cocktail. And if it doesn't have it, then it has to pull the nutrient that it doesn't have to try to synthesize this to happen. So you become sicker, right? All right. So, and white sugar too, if you're going to have sugar, you should really go with, sometimes at the Hispanic stores, the Mexican stores, they have these little bell-shaped things, and it's actually real cane sugar. And it's super cool because basically they took the sugar cane plant and they processed it into the liquid, and they didn't strip it, and then they stick it into these molds and they let it dry, and so it's pure cane sugar, so it has tons of nutrient in it. People that work in sugar fields, can eat excess amounts of sugar cane, and it has a lot of nutrient in it as a plant, right? And sugars. But when you refine it, refined sugar, white sugars, the molasses has been removed. So the molasses is what has all the nutrient density, because if you look at the bell shape, if you go into a Hispanic or Mexican store and you want to get like natural sugar and you get those little bells, you'll see the color difference between the refined sugar and then those pure came straight from the plant, liquid and everything, and dried into a mold. So it started quite a while ago with the whole, around the turn of the century, they were starting to get all kinds of skin type diseases that were really prevalent. And it happened when in the South quite a bit. And what they did, the powers that be, is, normally people would grow their own corn crops, and they, as they evolved, mostly they would have had a pedestal and, and pounded their own stuff like long ago, right? Or grinded it up themselves. And it got to where, there would be one mill in town, right? And people would take it there to the mill. And the mills were like more old school grinders, right? Where it left all the nutrient material. And then what they did, the powers that be, changed those into, mills. People take their stuff to grind it, and it would separate. It would literally take off the nutrient part to another, dump spot, and then give the off. And it was when it was becoming thinner and thinner and powder ground, when it wasn't so chunky anymore, right? And so these grains and stuff like that. So I also read this book on, there's always like the inbreeding component, of royal families or whatever. And then also it was talking about the Edwardian times. And it talked about the nutrition problems that they would have faced. So, you have all these workers down below in these castles in the Edwardian period as well. And they're the ones that collect all the grains. Everything's grown on the ground, right? All the birds that they hunt for big, gatherings. And the people underneath would actually grind it. Well, the people upstairs only like the refined bread, the refined, powder bread, the mushy, soft, nice bread. So the people downstairs were left with more of the shaft, right? Kind of the harder parts of the grains that they would have made the breads. But it was perfect because it had high nutrient density, especially B vitamins, huge amounts, right? So they were healthy, even though they were not being fed very much because they were eating the nutrient dense part of the bread, thank God. And probably other parts that, they didn't like upstairs, right? So the more that things became refined, the more mental illness that was seen in these kinds of setups, where you have massive amounts of people working downstairs for the few that are upstairs. And the people downstairs eating more of the nutrient dense food, even though they worked themselves into an early grave, right? Because they were enslaved. But it caused insanity with the hierarchy. Because guess what? They were nutrient depleted, and especially B vitamins, right? And that would make you totally wacko. It would make you totally bonko. B12 deficiency can even not only lead to into mental illness, but also can lead to a coma. So around the turn of the century, when they started to get putting in mills that refined the corn and all the other grains to powder, and the shaft was taken off, the harder parts were tossed off, they would sell, the people that grind your flour would sell the shaft to somebody else. And it still goes on today. So you get all the crappy ass bread, you get all the refined bread. And when, people that are grinding the grains, they sell, there's two different parts that they sell: the nutrient dense, hardcore nutritional part of the grain, and then the powder. The powder goes to mostly all, bread people. So basically in public or in, I'm calling lower or mid-level grocery stores, even the organic, wheat, non-GMO is refined powder, right? So that most of the shaft, has been removed. And that was the nutrient part. So this has been going on for a while. So, we can look at nutritional deficiencies as hereditary. And it's interesting, when I'm living in different places around different people and watching what they eat for their diets, because people get in a mindset where they keep using and doing the same things over and over again. And that has a spiritual component too, which means that you're never going to go anywhere or do anything differently than, what your parents would have done, right? And so it's in the nutrient, the emotional, the physical, and spiritual. Bruce Lipton talks a lot about it. Okay, so let's talk about the thyroid and thymus. So thyroid, remember? And then the thymus is right underneath it. And key with both of these is the immune system, right? The immune system is a huge component, right? Weight producing, it's the only other area that produces white cells, as much as they do, other than the marrow, right? I think that's right. I'm not awake yet, so I'm like, I have notes here. Okay, another thing too is a friend of mine was telling me that the thyroid can process all the blood in the body, right? I think it's like every 17 minutes or something like that. But what it specifically does is filter, and it looks for fungus, mold, and virus, right? So say you have a nutrient deficiency and your thyroid has been off for a long time, and then you get a virus, like a bad virus that you can't get rid of, like arthritis in your joints, right? Other types of, really strange, viruses kind of start to take over your body. I think things like lupus could be a virus. I even think lupus can be, I know this is kind of out there for some people, but just from what I've seen, interning in hospitals and stuff like that, I think lupus could be a contagion, a viral contagion. Because of, when people have it in close proximity, how many of the people get it. Or doctors predominantly tell healthcare workers in hospitals that they have lupus, or they make up a fake test or something, and then they get them medicated for lupus. Because, it's probably like 55% of people who work in hospitals have lupus. Serious, not even kidding. Okay, so, and the other thing too that's weird with MS and lupus is there's always a starting period of like chronic fatigue, which is nutritional deficiency. Then it moves, the tissue starts to go wrong, right? Then you move into a fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia feels almost like the tissues, because of how lumpy and weird it is, it feels like, the body is stealing nutrient out of the tissues in order to digest a lot of the foods that the person's eating that have zero nutrient in them, right? Okay. Thyroid does all kinds of stuff. Keeps you warm. It's where strength comes from, because think about it. If you got good, white cells jamming, you don't have any fungus and you don't have any mold and stuff in your blood, it's being taken care of. Plus, the thyroid's going to help to take some of the work off the liver, right? And so, just like nutrient, if you're eating foods, nutrient-dense foods in combinations, that's the way your body works. All your organs and glands are trying to work, synthesize what they have and operate at the highest function that they can. Until they can't. So, all right. So there's just a lot of components to the thyroid. And the big one is can be vision, aging skin, a really dry skin. Sometimes if the spleen is off too, people get really funky, weird, dry skin type stuff on their feet, which is also kind of an indication of, what the immune system looks like. So what I do is I just explain it, because I think a lot of people wonder. I mean, I work on people physically, and I work with people, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually on all levels. For the purpose of health, restoration, regeneration, and recovery. So, when I'm evaluating a person or an animal, or I go to a location and evaluate the location, there are lots of different things that I'm looking for, but mostly I'm going to look at the animals. I'm going to look at what's going on the property, and look for what's going on with people physically. Because you can really tell thyroid problems. Usually the eyebrows will stop growing, or they'll only grow half. Gums, their gums, you can see by the color of their gums and the type of gum tissue that they have. Because once you become kind of hormonally off balance, because it's a gland, the thyroid's a gland, so all your, glands deal with a lot of hormones. And hormones are super important in keeping a healthy body, and you can't just take a pill. You have to really clean up stuff. So sleeping can be, problems with sleeping or sleeping too much. So a lot of really, that's why I always call the thyroid more the master gland. And it's different. It's a bridge gland. Just like the thymus is a bridge gland, right? So let me just make sure. Oh, and so emotionally, so this is what we're gonna jam into this talk about The the rain is really coming down in the shed. It's pounding. It's good. I mean, well, I don't know. The whole chemtrail thing has really bothered me, and the way that they can manipulate the weather on the planet. I just don't like the chemicals, and that it's sterilizing the soil and the radiation, and that stuff bothers me. Okay, so anyway, let me finish this video, and then I'm going to make the second one. The third one's going to be on the bridge and like the spiritual components. But you can literally, because your thyroid is not working, hallucinate. Right? You can totally hallucinate and be, almost like you're schizophrenic, bipolar, because once the hormones are pretty radical, because the thyroid's like not working, and most people it's not working. If you have a hunchback or your head's pushed too forward, and this is another thing that really bothers me, the whole CrossFit and other types of exercise that you end up rolling forward, right? When you roll forward, you're kind of moving more into a gorilla vibration, and it's gonna, if you're not straight up like ballet, with your neck straight, your thyroid is probably not working. Your shoulders start to roll forward. And it's weird, on the front they look really good, but on the back you can see that they have like this hump, right? So that kind of takes us out of the human paradigm, and it starts to change our hormones in a way. By changing the structure of the body, changes how everything works. So you want to make sure that, do exercise where it improves your posture, pulls your shoulder blades back where they belong, straightens your neck, and aligns everything. Because, and that's going to be another video too about structure. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, and brain lateralization. I mean, there's a lot of components, and these are all things that I look for people to try to get everything in balance. So sometimes you just have to try to go through everything as best as you can. Okay, so anyway, so the end of this video, and so the rest of the videos, there's going to be different kinds of other things that you can do, like massage, how to fix your structure, what kind of things to do for your structure, how brain lateralization matters with, your glandular system, and also the bridge. So the next one's going to be the bridge. But anyway, one of the things that I'm not evolving and I'm not ascending. It's almost like I'm resetting, right? I'm going to, my body is starting to move back to a place where I was when I first came to this planet, and kind of the abilities that I had that, because I had a lot of stress and bad things happen to me. And I'm like everybody else, I've been beaten up. I've been, forced sexually. I've dabbled in a little bit of drugs and alcohol when I was young, and all the other things. And I've physically, always physically worked, my whole life. And just everything else, that has been involved in a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, just a lot of other stuff. So all these things have like tried to beat the star kid out of me. And so, unlike the rest of the people, I feel like I'm resetting and I'm going back to a better mode, right? Reboot. My system is being rebooted. And I'm starting to get those abilities back and how my brain works. I noticed that the last week, I'm starting to notice that it's starting to finally come around. Because I've had a lot of sleep and rest and really been isolating myself, you know, directly from the public for a while. And also, you know, just really working on my diet and making sure that everything I eat, you know, I know where it comes from or I made it, and really trying to focus in on nutrient density. So anyway, yeah, so I'm resetting. I'm going to an older timeline, a past timeline. So, all right, that's it. And it's kind of cool because when I was a kid, I could do some really cool stuff. And I felt like I forever lost those abilities, but I think they're actually coming back online on how it's just how my whole structure and energy field works. So I'm kind of excited about that. Because I miss that. I miss that person. I miss that that energy. And yeah. Okay. Video 3.